This meeting is for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Brenda J. will be sharing on When We Drew Near for 50 minutes. Brenda, thank you so much for your service and your willingness to share your life with us today. We are delighted to have you here at God's Meeting for the third time. So please help me give a warm welcome to Brenda J. from McKinney, Texas. Her home group is the Shivering Denizens. Welcome, Brenda, and over to you.
God, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I will help of your power, your love, and your way of life. May I do your will always. My name is Brenda, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober by the grace of a God I didn't believe in when I got here since July the 3rd of 1990. I'm grateful to be sober today, grateful to be a worker among workers. I'd like to give a special welcome to folks on this meeting that are not of Christian affiliation, okay? Even though our prayers sometimes come from that experience because it's who we were at the beginning. Just rest assured that there is a seat at the table for you, and you are welcomed here. I also like to thank the folks that I have the opportunity to love and to walk with, people who have consented to deep water, people who have consented to the highest steps, to the highest places. I often drag them with me, and some days they drag me with them. You know who you are on this meeting, and you know that there's no way that I get to be your speaker today without the investment and the consent that you have given to walk with me, especially over this last year. So I'm grateful that you're here. And if you send me something in the chat, I don't read the chat ever. Like, I just don't, because there's nothing in there that I need. Unlike my fridge, I do stop by there several times a day. But like, if you write in the chat, this girl was mad at me for like 9 months. And then like I came on a meeting to share, and she's like, I've been mad at you for 9 months. And I'm like, okay, but do you see other people here at this meeting? I said, how in the hell, how was I supposed, well, thank God we got that out the way. How in the hell was I supposed to know that you're mad? She said, I put it in the chat to you. Don't do that. Don't write your number, because I don't look at the chat. And I love you, and do the next indicated thing is, oh, look, if you're going to call me anyway and talk for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, 25 minutes, we're going to come to the same conclusion. And that is that you should probably find a way to surrender. So we can just start from there and see where God takes us. If you are in the US and it is 2:00 for you on a Saturday and you're sitting on this meeting, whatever you got, you must have it really badly. Because this is like time out, especially when it's sunny. So I want to pray for you. I'm here because I had to be. That's all I'm trying to say. So glad to see the rest of you. I am really happy. Look at us. We're starting out with 79 folks. All right. Let me know when we hit 30 and I'll wrap it up. This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. And in a few seconds, he was overwhelmed with the conviction of the presence of God. It poured over him and through him with the certainty and the majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers that he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love, he stepped from the bridge onto the shore. And for the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. Thus, our friend's cornerstone was fixed in place. No later vicissitude has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away. This very night, years ago, it disappeared, save for a few brief moments of temptation. The thought of a drink had not returned. And at such a times, a great revulsion had risen in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. God had restored his sanity. And what is this but a miracle of healing? Yes, and its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his master, and then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. I'm looking over this group, though, not in the book. I'm looking over this group. God looks to have restored most of us to our right minds. Not judging, reporting. Yet it says he humbly offered himself to his maker, and then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. To some of us, though, we grow into it more slowly. But he has come to all who have honestly sought him. He has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. Oh, hell, we're at 77. I would try not to lose anybody here at the beginning. I want you to know that I came all this way. I told all those truths. I worked all those inventories. I sat in all those meetings and traveled to all those conferences so I could sit on this meeting with you today and say we have indeed been light carriers, light gatherers, and it is that light that I bring to you today. The only reason I get to be your speaker is because God needs me to stay right there next to him. Other speakers get to speak because they know things, and they get to speak because they're really good at it, and they get to speak because they know the book, and they get to speak for all kinds of reasons. But I get to speak when I get to speak because it's God's desire that I stay close. I have as difficult and as fractured a story as anyone, and I have made mistakes. The good news is that I'm making new mistakes. For like the first 20 years, I just made the same 5 mistakes over and over and over. And then like at 21, I started making new ones. So I already understand something important that I just want to tell you. And then I want to tell you what I'm going to tell you. And then I'll tell you what I told you. I already understand it. Some of y'all are on here and I'm already not who you thought you were going to come see. But all I can ask of you is to not let the poverty of my language or my person to stop you from maybe in the middle of the readings or the sharing or the tears. Maybe you might catch a glimpse of God's grace today. And that might be worth it. And so I'm a school teacher by profession, and I teach 12-year-olds because that's how old I was when I started drinking. And so when I asked the principal who offered me a job, who were the kids nobody wanted, he said, that'd be the 6th grade. I said, I'll take them. And the first few years, I was excited because I was seeing the information for the first time myself. Because I was drunk the first time around and then mad the second time around. And so this is what I know how to do. unless what I'm about to share, as the great writer said that day, that unless what I am about to share is more precious than silence, I should not speak. But what I brought to you today is my gift. I want to go listen to speakers talk on a topic and have equipment with me when I leave. I want to have tools. I want to have hope. I want to have a chance. I want to have a different outlook and a new way. And that's what I'm going to give you today. I'm not one of those, you're going to be shocked. I'm not really one of those shy people that has trouble coming out, especially when I am speaking about my relationship and my commitment to God and God's relationship and God's commitment to me. And I just call him God because I don't know what else. Baba works just fine. Alicia, Kumba, I don't care. It don't matter. The only thing that I need to know about my relationship with God is that when I say God's name, I say God, I hear the response from within me. I don't know what day that happened. Before I used to pray and then I'd hear God coming from over there. And for a long time, I'd say God, and then I hear him coming from the ceiling or somewhere on the second floor. I wasn't sure, but God's voice has always come from somewhere else, except now when I call God's name, he answers me right here and says, yes. And so I'm going to tell you, based on my experience, those of you that brought paper, you'll be glad. Here are the 4 things, the 4 obstacles to me drawing closer. I'm going to talk about what are the 4 main things that keep me from drawing near. Then I'm going to talk about the actions that I take every day, the 4 actions I take every day to draw near. These are the things that you should be able to turn down the volume of my share and watch my life. And then I'm going to end with what are the 4 results of drawing near? Or as Tina Turner would say, what have you done for me lately? Right? Because you're an alcoholic like I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to do crap until I'm figure out what the payoff is. So I'm going to talk about what the payoff has been for me. All right, well, let's get about this business. I hope somebody's keeping time, or I don't know where the bird is. Vamos, I can't follow a bird. Okay, just help me. Okay, mira, here are the 4 obstacles, 4 things that get in the way. The first thing is my ideas. Ooh, that's bad news right away, y'all. My ideas keep me from drawing near to God, because my ideas are like, my sponsor very early in recovery said, okay, so on this paper right here, write the problems in your life. So I wrote down all the problems in my life. And then she said, in the next column, write down how you can solve them. And I'm like, oh, I love this assignment. I grabbed my pen. I wrote down all my problems. Then I wrote down all the things that I could do to solve them. And then I took him to her really proud, because it was an extensive list of my ideas. And she said, Brenda, until you get to the list of the stuff that you have here, you don't need a sponsor. She said, because as long as you have ideas about how to solve your own separateness from God, as long as you have your own ideas about how to rectify the grief, if you have your own ideas about how to approach this person whom you have harmed, we don't need God. And if you don't need God, you don't need a sponsor. I quickly and very quietly put my list away. So my ideas are in my way. The second thing that's in my way are my solutions. Anything that I'm like I sometimes I call my sponsor and I say to him, I said, listen, I was thinking about that struggle I was having, and I had this idea. I think that what we need to do is, and very often what happens next is I'm like, hello. He's not really interested in my solutions, apparently. I want to tell you a secret about my solutions. They originate. My solutions originate in my ego. It stays up at night and it heads a meeting. My ego, it runs a meeting at night, not an AA meeting, not a recovery meeting of any sort, a meeting with all the voices in my head. I wake up in the morning, they have already typed up the minutes. Don't bother. It's not worth it. Nobody loves you. You're not ever going to amount to anything. That pain in your back, it's cancer. You're dying. don't get out of bed. My solutions. If you're new, we're not afraid of your problems. We are, however, deathly afraid of your solutions of them. The third obstacle to me drawing nearer to God is all the stuff in 32 years that I have left unaddressed. And that could be true for 5 years and 2 years and 2 months. Anything that I have left unaddressed, as in, ooh, yeah, I remember doing that. I'm going to come back to that later, and never talk about it again. Here's the secret. Whatever I keep to myself, whatever I hide, it is whatever question I'm not willing to answer. It'll be the question that takes me out to a drink. And it will be the first question at the door to greet me when I come back. If I am so fortunate as to be able to come back. The question I went out on will be the one greeting me at the door upon my return. When women ask me to sponsor them and they've stopped working with somebody else, or they're in the middle of that process, I say to them, what step were you on with your sponsor? The one that all of a sudden wasn't sober enough for you? What step were you on? And they're like, well, invariably. Well, I was on step 9. And I'm like, fabulous. We're going to start right there. They're like, wait a minute. You're supposed to go back to start at 1. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're not sober. Oh, stop. There's still some in there. Mira, Latina, para que. Ay, mira, okay, vamos a ver. Okay, so all the stuff I leave unaddressed, I can write that on a little piece of paper. If you can do that too. Like you can write all the things you're not going to tell anybody and then put that away. And then when I drink again, I had to go look at my paper and go, oh yeah. Anyway, I'll move on. And the last thing that will keep me from drawing near to God is my lower self. There used to be a girl I went to meetings with, and she used to call her Petty Betty. And that's the person that'll sit on this meeting right here and say, why did that person have their background all blocked like that? They look like they're disappearing, like a Harry Potter, the invisibility cloak. Or it'll stay here and say, that woman says she's from California. She ain't even listening. Petty. They read the things to open the meeting in the wrong way. Petty. She walked by me and didn't say hello. Petty. My lower self. The one that cannot bring itself to extend kindness in any capacity. That thing about me that is always lazy and distracted and right. That part of me will keep me from drawing near. So it was my ideas, my solutions, my unaddressed issues, and then my lower self. Now, you can, as I said, turn down the volume, stop listening to what Brenda J is sharing in meetings, and by God's grace, only by God's grace and God's mercy and God's help, I can do the following behaviors. I can engage in the following behaviors, and then you can tell that I'm drawing near. We tell kids all the time, you need to have a better attitude, and then we don't tell them how to get one of those. How do you get any better attitude? I don't even know how I got the one I have, except you're on my nerves. And so I tell kids all the time, I got paper everywhere, people. So we make a little T-chart. Priscilla, this is for you, baby. Look, we make a little T-chart right here. And on the left, we put looks like, sounds like. Looks like, sounds like. And then they have to put a title. And the title is better attitude. And then they have to put 3 things that somebody that it has a better attitude, what are 3 things you can look at and see about them? Well, if somebody has a good attitude, you can see that they're walking around with their eyes up. Fabulous. I'll write that down. And anyway, so this is 3 looks like and 3 sounds like. Somebody who is drawing near to God, what are some of the things you hear them say? In my case, you know I'm drawing close to God when you hear this come out of my mouth. Uh-oh. When you hear, uh-oh, that means I'm trying to get closer to God. It sounds messy. It sounds loud. I say to people all the time, you'll know when you hit bottom. It has a very distinctive sound. So here are those things. You will hear me pray. That's an action I take to draw near God. I pray. You will hear me pray every day. The second thing that you'll see me do every day is consent to be open to you. I know people who have as much time in sobriety as I do, and they will not speak in front of anybody. Like they're not going to do it. And oftentimes I've been puzzled by that, because it's been my call from God to run out in traffic, which is what I call speaking at a meeting, to run out in traffic since the beginning of my time. And so I'll say to them, why don't you speak at meetings? What is that? And they're like, Brenda, do you understand that when you get on a meeting and people are listening to you, they are judging you? They're like, God, she's got 32 years. I'm going to listen just to figure out what not to do. Or they'll look at you and go, somebody should have talked to that girl, told her blue ain't her color, move on. Or I can't believe she's so loud. Why can't she calm down and speak like normal people? And then I grew up in Iowa, and nothing against Iowa, but that's just kind of what that voice says. And then I'll just be more calm and quiet, and we'll almost do the next section together. I don't know how to do that. Look, I spent a long time in AA and my other 12-step programs. I spent a long time trying to make this light that God has given me little so that He would be okay with it. I tried to make it sound a certain way so that it wouldn't put you off. I almost lost myself. Sober, doing God's will, trying to blend in so that you wouldn't be uncomfortable. Clearly, I moved on. So I consent to open myself up to you. She says, Brenda, they will judge you. I'm like, I don't have to get on a meeting to be judged. So will the people at the apartments where I live. No, listen, I just want to, if nobody in the entire world, now that my parents have both passed, nobody in the entire world has more information about who I really am than I do. Nobody. So whatever anybody else says, it is partial information to what I already know about who I am. You don't have more information than I do, trust me. The other thing, so I pray, you should hear me pray. You should also be able to know that I welcome you, that I'll get on here and tell it. People think I have like 75,000 home groups, because every time I go on a meeting, I'm like, hello, welcome to our meeting. I've just been there myself. It's my first time. It does not matter. I am consenting to opening to you. Just a little side story. My sponsor, I love my teachers. I love the men and the women who have gone far enough down in their own path. And then they turn around and call me toward them. And my sponsors, they are my teachers. And in my culture, when there is an amount of respect that you show to your teachers. And so when my sponsor would walk into a meeting, even if she was late, I would always stand to acknowledge that my teacher had arrived. She celebrated something like 43 years recently, and she said that one of the things I helped her with was to get on meetings on time, because she couldn't stand the way I would stand up and point out what time she arrived at the meeting. I said, "You're welcome." So I'm gonna pray, and then I'm gonna consent to welcome all of you, and then you're gonna see me do this one thing. I can't tell you how many times I call my sponsor. I'm like, look, I went to a meeting. I talked to a newcomer. I talked to somebody else in the fellowship. I read a page. I said my prayers, and I do not feel any better. And my sponsor will quietly say, she'll say, Brenda, did you work the steps? I said, I'm going to have to call you back. I've been here 32 years. I forget. And one time there was a newcomer. She came to the meeting, and I said, hey, I'm going to be here tomorrow. So come again tomorrow, okay? Didn't see her for 3 weeks. Then she finally pops up again. I'm like, where were you, man? She said, I forgot I was in AA, but when I remembered, I came back. It's like that. I work the steps all the time, and then I forget. Then I get back at it. I'm not sober. I'm not sober. I'm not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm not working the steps, if I'm doing just that other stuff, I'm not a member. I'm visiting. If I don't have a sponsor and I don't have a book and I'm not doing my work, I'm not in AA. I'm visiting AA. Getting really pissed off at the people who have a sponsor, have their book, and are working the steps. So you'll see me work the steps. And finally, you will watch me cultivate an open heart, a welcoming heart, making room for all of us. I tell people when I get the opportunity to speak in person, I tell them, if you're standing or sitting or behaving in a way that puts you on the fringe of the fellowship, there's some of you here I'm talking to you. Like if you think nobody cares if I go to the meeting, it doesn't matter to anybody if they see me regularly or not. Nobody even notices that I'm a part. I'm having a hard time. I don't know how to do this. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from this pandemic. I'm just so tired. I'm going to go now. I am here to tell you one thing if you hear nothing else. Not only is there a place for you here, it is in the chair right next to me. It's in the chair. Come all the way in and sit all the way down. Come on. It matters to me. Tell everybody Brenda J's your friend from Texas. Some of them won't ever talk to you again, but most of them, they're going to be, hey, good for you. There's a welcoming heart. Because we all did this really important thing before we got on the meeting. We all did this hugely important thing. We had to walk away from the thing to which we were addicted. We had to, whether that's sugar or cigarettes or sex or alcohol or drugs or gambling or shopping. People are like, look, get back in your box. Get back over there. Now you're just meddling in my crap and nobody gave you the right to do that. You know, we all had to walk away from some sort of addiction, some sort of obsession. And the biggest problem with being obsessed, hold up, talk amongst yourself for a minute. I need to hydrate. The biggest problem with being obsessed is that there's no oxygen there. Now, I'm going to tell you the 4 results I've gotten from drawing near. What's happened to me? I found out I could be perfectly okay, perfectly at home, perfectly sober, perfectly grateful, and not have any of the things that people almost convinced me I needed. For a long time, I thought the only way I could be happy, joyous, and free was to have a certain amount of money in my bank account. Somebody told me that's what I was going to need. I didn't need that. For a long time, I tried to have as many friends as possible because somebody told me that if I had a lot of friends, that I'd feel better. I didn't need that. All the things that they told me I was going to need to be okay, I found out I'm okay, and I don't have those things. All right. So first, number 1, I get to live in abundance. I get to live in abundance. With the poverty that I experience in all kinds of areas in my life, I still live in abundance. Look, here's how it goes. All the money belongs to God. I belong to God, so all the money belongs to me. None of it is in my bank account, but that don't have to matter at all. All the planes belong to God. I belong to God, so all the planes. On 9/11, none of us could go anywhere. We were all alike. It didn't matter how much money you had, by the way. Nobody was getting up into the airways. So I live in abundance. People come into my house, they come into my apartment, and they look at stuff, and they're like, God, this is so cool. I just have pictures. It's nothing, really. But then I'm like, do you like that? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So then I take it off the wall and I give it to them. And they're like, whoa, what? And I'm like, everything in my house should be loved. It doesn't mean it has to be loved by me. It just means there has to be love. And just like that, there's another picture in its place. Why? Because all the pictures belong to God and I belong to God, so all the pictures belong to me. I don't ever have to be afraid of what I think I'm going to lose, because the only reason I would lose it is because God's making room. Please don't forget that. The things that I have lost, I have only lost because God has something else to put in its place, and he can't put that new thing in its place because my hands and my heart and my mind and my soul are clenched, holding on to all the things that I have had to settle for. I can't have what God wants for me now because I'm tied up in what I settled for. So I live in abundance. If you come visit me though, and we got to dinner, you finna have to pay though, because anyway, just let me know you're coming. All right. Number 2. The second thing that happens to me when I draw near God, the second result I get is that there's no space between us now. There's no space between me and God. God lives inside me and I live inside God's heart. Before I left, he goes, wait, don't forget, come here. And I went back toward God, and he took this little sliver of his heart, and then he took a little sliver out of mine, and we traded. So there's always a piece of God in my heart, and I'm always in God's heart. And he said that we needed it for 2 things. One, we could always tell where we were from each other. And then when it was time, we could both find our way home. There's no distance left in my life between me and God. One time my sponsor said, Brenda, if you could have anything from God, what would you ask for? She goes, and like you were going to get it. What would you ask for? She said, take all the time you need. I went, wait, I know. She goes, what is it? I said, I want to be closer to God. And she started laughing. She threw her head back laughing. And I'm like, why are you laughing? She said, Brenda, you are already at the end of every God's breath. And God is at the end of every one of your breaths. You can't get any closer to God. There's no space between me and God anymore. Number 3, results. First, live in abundance. 2, there's no distance between God and I. My third one is my whole life becomes this demonstration of God. I don't have a life that you can see God in sometimes, or on the weekends, or on Wednesdays. I have a God in my life right now that you can see all the time. And it's messy. One time I went to go to get something at a deli. I was living in Tampa. And the guy said, the little guy that helped me, he said, thanks. When we were done, I said, well, thank you. He said, no, I mean, thank you. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? He said, I'm new to AA. And I heard you speak at that group 2 weeks ago. And sometimes when people speak at AA and then they come in here and they don't know that I'm in AA, they're real jerks. So I told that boy the truth. I said, baby, you just got me on a good day. But I try to let all of my life be a demonstration of what God can do. Look, I thought I was only going to be happy when I had the money. I figured out how to be happy without it. There's nothing I need. One time I went to go speak somewhere and I'm like, I want to see the dolphins in the water. I've never seen dolphins in the water. And apparently they had some over there because they had this ocean right by them. And this guy comes up at the end of the thing and he says, here, go over there to this place and tell him this. So I went over there to this place. Turned out that this little dude was his sponsee and he was taking a boat out. And I went with him and we saw dolphins. What? Stop it. God always wants what I want, or he wants something better. God never, ever, ever wants less for me than what I want for me, ever. God always, my other name for God is I call God something better. Because I say, God, you know, there's a whole debate about how you ain't supposed to pray for yourself and all that. Whatever. On account of, I've been praying specific things that I've been wanting from God my whole life. Because I don't want him to mess it up if he decides to give it to me. And besides, like right now, what I'm praying for is I'm praying for a new car. But see, this is what I do. I say, God, you know my little car is geriatric value right now. Is old. It's still working, but I could use a new car. But here's what I do. Here's what I do. And God, if you should find it necessary to give me a car, I will probably, maybe one day, give somebody a ride to a meeting. Come on now. I should have the car. I'm going to take one person to one meeting. Then they can find their own ride after that. But I'm willing, God. My whole life becomes a demonstration of my relationship with God. And then the last thing is that I get the promises that come with surrender. In every situation in my life, I get to talk to my sponsor, do my work, read, pray, surrender, meditate, have a snack. Have a snack. I get to do all these things. But also, when I'm having a difficult time, I can do all that. Or if it's an emergency, there is an emergency button in every situation in my life. It's like those, what do they call them? Those little trap rooms that you have to make your way around. There's a button. There's a button in every conflict, in every pain, in every regret, in everything. There is a button, and it's marked surrender. And I could go over there and press that button, and poof, I'm in God's presence. And the puzzle solved. And I'm on my way. I'm on my way to take that last and final step from bridge to shore. Here are the promises. Hey, I live on a street where guys drive their drag racing cars down here. I pray for them in Spanish. I'm just going to leave it right there. Here are the promises. My promises. They're not a book. Nobody knows them. I asked God to help me tell you what I need to tell you today. And he said, tell them about the promises of surrender. I said, I would be very glad to. What are they? And God said, there's three. Promise of surrender. We are not alone ever about anything. We are not alone ever about anything. That is the first promise of surrender. So if I'm feeling lonely and I'm feeling left alone and I'm feeling, if I surrender, I am encased. I am welcomed. I am awake with God. Surrender. Second promise. This process, this whole meet with your sponsor, can take some time, be objectionable, do all that whole process, go to meetings, all of that. It works. That's why I should do it, because it works. That's the second promise of surrender. When I surrender, all of this that we do will work. Will work to what? Will work to help me fulfill the objective. What was the objective? Drawing nearer to God. The place we started from a minute ago. What I'm trying to do is figure out how to draw near. Surrender does that for me. There's a movie called Amistad, and it's a story about the slave trade. And at one point, the slaves were brought to a courtroom in shackles to be served justice. And there was a scene in the movie where one of the slaves was talking, and at one point he raises his hands like this with the shackles on him, and all he can say is, "Give me free. Give me free." So the things in my life that there have been things that I've had to do hard things, man. Sober. I lost my father first. He would have been the anchor. And then I lost my mom, and she would have been the compass. when my mom died, I was living in Tampa, and I flew into my hometown, and I knew my mom was going to die that night. And my brothers and sisters had all been there for all the days leading up to it. And so I said to them, I said, why don't you all go get some sleep? And then I said, let me just sit with her, everybody go rest. And they did. They knew she was going to die that night, and they were so grateful. They were so grateful that I was willing to sit with her and walk her to the door. They thought I was doing that by myself, and I wasn't. I was doing it with all of you. I was doing it with all that light and all that joy and all that humility and all that God that I had found in you. And I stayed up all night with my mom. I pulled up a chair next to her bed, and I told her stories. I sang. I played guitar. And I sang to her. And I held her hand. And all night, she was laying on this side, and all night she would cry. And I would wipe her tears. When she passed away the following morning at daybreak, well, of course, she died at daybreak. Everyone was there, all of my brothers and sisters, except the youngest one of us, because she had taken her little boys to school. And she was just inconsolable that she hadn't been there. And when I had a minute, I pulled her aside. I said, come here. And I said, last night, Mom cried all night, especially when I told her that she could go, that we were all going to be okay, that we were all going to be okay, that it was okay, that she had done her job, that she had run her race, that she had answered God's voice. And I said, and then she passed away. I said, here. That Kleenex with my mom's tears was the most precious possession I owned. I had told myself that I would hold those to my heart always. And I gave them to her. You've heard the story of the beggar who goes to the king and he says, I want the bag of jewels. And the king reached behind him and he took the bag of jewels and he handed it to him, and the guy left. And then he came back and he brought the bag of jewels back. He said, I didn't want the jewels. He said, I wanted that thing inside you that let you give him to me. I want to do enough work. Look, it's just like, I don't know, like it's not even working out well, things have gone astray. I had some health things, and they took a EKG of my heart, and the woman says, Miss Also, she says, it shows that you had a heart attack. And then she says, like, do you know when that could have been? And I'm like, I don't know, because my hair has looked good every day. People can't have a heart attack when their hair, like my hair had been like all messed up. I'm like, heart attack, everybody. But my hair, I said, I don't know. The truth was that I wanted to say to her, which time has my heart not broken? And then she says, your heart is weak. She said, there's not enough voltage it could just stop. And I said to her, I don't know what to tell you. These apparent problems that you're presenting to me, they're not my problems. Those problems belong to God. There's a line in the traditions that says, may God sustain us in these efforts for so long as we shall need us. So I said to God, you have sustained me. And if we're done, thank you. They quickly got me in to see a cardiologist because you know how people will react. And I went and saw him, and he ran more tests, and he comes in. He said, well, I did my own testing, and everything looks perfect. I don't have any idea what the hell they were talking about. Your heart is fine. There's no signs of heart attack. I'm not going to lie, y'all. I'm like, and I told my therapist, because she's afraid the money was about to dry up. I'm kidding. I hope she never hears this talk. That was just wrong. So I told my therapist, I said, well, one day I had this heart attack and everything, and like it was a little gloomy. And then the next day, perfect bill of health. The dude don't want to see me for 6 weeks. She says, do you think that they made a mistake at the doctor's office? I said, no, ma'am, I don't. Now, I don't know how you're going to put this in the notes, but what I believe happened is that I gave everything to God, and God gives everything to me. And so God fixed whatever was broken. And now I'm spectacularly delicious and joyful and juicy and can proceed. I said, now put that in the notes however you want. One of these days, we're going to read my notes, which I'm sure. I said to her, I said, look, I'm going to quit. 2 minutes. Just let me tell you the story. So I walked into the therapist's office, and I had this big boulder of stuff that I've been carrying around since I was 4 because I decided that God couldn't handle it. So I was taking care of it. And I was talking to the therapist, and I went back for my appointment, And one day I was talking to her, and I looked over, and the boulder was gone. It was gone. God has not relieved my alcoholism. God has removed my alcoholism. There are people in my life who, out of my own poverty, I have injured and regret doing so. From the very bottom of my heart. But every day, when I wake up and I realize that I have another 24 hours, I set my intention for the day on their healing, on their restoration, on their experience with joy. I'm not going to live long enough to fix everything I broke. But I can tell you that every day, whatever problems I may have, those problems are going to feel the stubborn ounces of my resistance to hopelessness. My stubborn ounces of my insistence on grace, my insistence on hope, my insistence on God, on goodness, on all of that stuff. And I just want you to know that I want to work enough steps, tell enough truth, speak enough meetings, go to enough conferences so that I can stand in front of you on any given day and have said to you, I am free. I am free. God has freed me. I am freed. That's it. That's all I have for you. God love you.